All right, everyone, welcome back to YouTube. Today, I want to talk about the perception of what was given to us, growing up, and what are the limitations that were handed to us, especially as men. So a lot of times people don't really want to talk about the fact that, we were given a set of parameters of what life can be. Part of that is, you've got to get your education. And if you don't have a college degree, then you can't get a job that pays you good money. And then even when you get your college degree, you're meant to go into this cog in the wheel style workforce that benefits either corporations or government, but doesn't really benefit you. Well, it's like, you think that you're making good money and you're like, oh, well, it's more money than somebody without a college education. May be true, but you're still living in a limited capacity. You're still living within somebody else's confines of your life and what you're capable of making. They end up having a complete stranglehold over the lifestyle you can have without you getting an extra job, without you doing a side business, without your spouse bringing in really good money. There is a confine there that's created for you, and very, very, very select people are outside of that confine, either making money really, really well in the top echelons of business. Government, they shouldn't be. I know they have an actual cap on pretty much every position, so every politician that's a millionaire, multimillionaire is corrupt. We can all agree pretty much on that. We've seen that recently in politics. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. If you're a multimillionaire and you've been lifetime in politics, you're corrupt as fuck. But we're not going there. Right now, we're just going to the fact that we live in confines that are built by society, and especially as men, on top of the confines of what we are told is capable and is presented to us as a lifestyle that we can have. On top of that, we have the societal expectations of what men are supposed to do, what type of jobs men are supposed to do, how men are supposed to act, how men can create their own life in this certain kind of box, right? There's no going outside of that box. Critical thinking is not supported, nor is it influenced in any way, shape, or form. So all we're trying to do is survive in life. Essentially, we want to complain that it's hard when most of life really isn't that hard. We want to complain that it's hard, especially for us in Western culture, right? But it's not that hard. And at the same time, it is also not supposed to be suffering. You're supposed to be enjoying every day, but everybody wants to suffer through work. They want to live for the weekend. They want to live for, the next promotion, which is a measly few $1,000s, if that, right? They want to live for these very mediocre lives. And that's really where I find the issue in today with men. Part of it is because once we've gotten to the point that we're in kind of society and we are expected to be quote unquote men in society, all of those parameters that confine us, all those parameters that restrict us, those are what we truly live by. And in that, we end up struggling to actually say, well, what if I want something different later in life? Or what if I want to create something more now because I feel really, really isolated. I feel really confined to this box that I don't really want to be part of anymore. What am I going to do? I'm not permitted as a man to change my lifestyle or to change my career path, because the fact is I've been in this career path for 5 or 10 years or whatever, and I don't really want to start from ground zero. And to start from ground zero means that, I'm actually going to be looked at as less than a man or a leader that I'm currently looked at in this field, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all of these excuses. It's all of these prescriptions. On top of all of this, on top of all of it, let's just pile on more, is our family's expectations on us based on the societal expectations on them. So you believe these stories. My family is nothing but blue collar. My family works hard for their money and gets paid fairly and is able to put food on the table, but doesn't necessarily have a means to have vacations when they want or experience life the way they want to. My family or people like me aren't meant to have white collar jobs, or people like me aren't meant to own businesses, or people like me aren't meant to be wealthy, or I'm too dumb to do that. The list goes on and on and on and on. Too dumb to have an education, too dumb to be something that is bigger than just, simple, food to table to living as living paycheck to paycheck. Like, those things, it's not to demean anybody that lives that way, because trust me, I lived that way. When I was growing up, that's how I lived. My parents didn't have money to retire. Neither of them are still retired. Very blue collar family. We didn't really live by the skin on our teeth, but we weren't wealthy by any means. So it was a very blue collar lifestyle I grew up with. And for a long time, I believed all these stories, which is why I'm talking to you guys about this. I believed all of these stories only up until the last 4 or 5 years, since I've really taken on my own development, since I've really taken on my own expansion as a man and started to look past the veil of these limitations that were put on me. As I've started to do that, that's when I've started to realize that all this story I've created for myself, while it makes me struggle to do something more, like be a business owner or make as much money as possible, or look at myself and say, I can be $1 million or $2 million or $5 million a year earner, I can do those things. To look at myself and say those things was just like, wow, no, that's for sports players and actors, right, in Hollywood. That's it. And then high level CEOs who are in maybe the medical field or something like that, or corrupt businessmen in the top echelons of businesses. So like, it wasn't for me. I didn't come from that pedigree. So I had this self-defeating negotiation every day that I struggled with, to say, who was I to say that I could make that kind of money? And since I didn't grow up in that, and I didn't start thinking this way till I was in my 30s, there was no way. I was past my prime to even create that. But the falsehood is all of it. That's the falsehood. Every single second and ounce and conversation piece, that's the falsehood. Every single piece of this, guys, it's the first piece of awareness we have to have. Those constrictions, those restrictions, those limitations were all put on us because guess what? You are more serving the government and businesses when you're a cog in the wheel than if you are a free thinker. If you are somebody who wants to create and expand and actually establish true wealth. You are a combatant against that society. You are better off to them. And I say them, I know people say them and they and all these things that, like, people are like, who's this arbitrary cabal, right? But realistically, it is them in the power of how we operate society through laws, politicians, it's corporate greed, it's corporations, it's the people who are the government in general, the way that the government structures contracts, the way that government structures all of the interactions with private business and specific private businesses and countries around the world. All of this is to say that that is they, and they prefer us to be more asleep and just going through the motions, because your happiness, your purpose, your ideal life is not supportive of their bottom dollar. And so if we're going to be real about this, men, we first have to break the chains that society and the government was ever looking out for us. They were not. because one, they don't actually understand men. They don't. They don't understand that many men are living a life of unhappiness. Many men are living a life of struggle. Many men are living a life of, self-hatred, depression, sadness, alcoholism, all of this stuff. Many men are living that way because of the fact that we continue to subscribe to this, because if we don't, our masculinity is challenged. Now, people may have not told you this, but if you think about it, if you don't follow this, your masculinity is challenged. I'll give you guys a little bit of a story here. My wife obviously has created a phenomenal business that has impacted women worldwide for years, and she has created massive wealth out of this business. And when she and myself went and saw some family, they didn't quite understand what she did to make money, which is fine. It's different products of different eras. And they thought that I was the one that was more successful because I had the limiting government job, because it was stable, right? These are the failures of society to convey truly what freedom is. Because if you are in a stable job and you can retire at 65, and that's when you get to magically live this beautifully restricted life, because guess what? You're still on a fixed fucking income. That's where society wants you to be. They don't want you to be like my wife. They don't want you guys to say like, oh yeah, I don't have a guaranteed job tomorrow, and everything that I make, everything I do is on me. So if I'm going to lack this month, that's on me. But if I'm going to excel next month, that's on me too. They don't see that as a form of freedom. And they don't see the fact that everything about being in a government or a 9-to-5 job is restrictive. Everything about it is to take your life away from you. Think about how much time you spend waking hours in your job compared to your personal life. Far surpasses it. Far surpasses it. So guys, realistically, we have to break the chains of what society is telling us is okay, what society says our life is supposed to look like, and the fact that our masculinity is challenged if we don't follow that. We have to get rid of that. Because the more you hold on to that, the more you are going to struggle in this life. The more you are going to struggle with the people that you're around. The more you are going to struggle with money and happiness and abundance and wealth and freedom and joy. The more you are going to struggle with purpose. You don't have the ability to live or find purpose when you are attached to somebody else's goals. So find your stuff by first off shedding this chains, these shackles of the confined and prescriptive societal and governmental expectation. I mean, that was the whole education system was developed around this. You see it if you travel anywhere in the world where there was communism or socialism at one time, you see, or currently, you see the price we pay when we just buy into that and don't live in our freedom and don't live in our happiness and don't live in our prosperity and our joy. Those are the things that confine us, guys. And if you are going to continue to believe that that's what you need to do, then you are going to continue to be depressed, to be living for the weekend, to be a drunk asshole, to eat like an asshole, to treat your body like an asshole. You are going to constantly follow that. But until you wake up and say, I'm a sovereign being and I'm a man who is looking after myself and looking after the people I love, so I'm going to do what makes me happy because that affects them more beneficially than anything else, then you start to take back the power. And that's where masculinity needs to be, guys. That's where we as men need to be. We need to start challenging ourselves. We need to start challenging these precepts and say, hey, this is not my story. And I can change it at any moment. I don't care if you're 35, 40, 50, whatever. You have the ability to change this at any fucking moment if you choose to do so. But the more that you hang on to the structures that say you're supposed to be and do this according to their plan, the more you're just going to live your life. in sadness. And you are going to reflect that to everybody around you, and you will undoubtedly influence the next generation to do the same as you, and they will not seek their own power. That's a lot of responsibility, man. And it's not just you, that's women too. But that's a lot of responsibility. So take it seriously. And also, why wouldn't you want to live happy? Why wouldn't you want to find your purpose? Why wouldn't you want to find who you are in this world and actually wake up every day lit up to be that fucking guy? Why wouldn't you? That's where joy is, guys.